The name Medusa comes from the ancient Greek and means guardian or protector. Some mythology tells us that Medusa was one of three sisters called the Gorgons. These terrible monsters had snakes for hair and were so hideous to look upon that their very gaze could turn anyone to stone. In fact, the name Gorgon comes from the Greek word gorgos, meaning horrible. Unlike her sisters, Stheno and Uriel, who were born to sea gods and were therefore immortal, Medusa was born to human parents. She grew up to become a priestess in a temple of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and was known for her extreme beauty. Medusa was so alluring that Poseidon, the god of the sea, took notice of her as she walked to the temple one day. Poseidon, finding her to be irresistible, tried to seduce her, but when it became clear to him that Medusa was not going to give in, he attacked her and forced himself onto her. This terrible violation had taken place within the temple of Athena, and the horror of the event within her hallowed temple space caused Athena to awaken with anger. At this point, the motivations behind Athena's actions vary, depending on who is telling the tale. Some say Athena was jealous of Medusa's beauty, which even gods found to be irresistible. Some tell us that she was protecting Medusa from her own beauty, and the pain it would, and already had, caused her. Others still say that Medusa took the brunt of Athena's wrath simply because Poseidon was above reproach, as he was Athena's uncle and one of the most powerful of the gods. Whatever her motivation, the outcome is the same in all of these stories. Athena turned her anger onto Medusa and punished her by turning her into a hideous monster with snakes growing out of her head, and a stare that could turn anyone to stone who dared to look into her eyes. This final injustice to the already brutalized Medusa led to her being exiled and living her days as a monster, hunted by those determined to make a name for themselves. These fools would become statues for the space Medusa guarded. She was not out hunting people or terrorizing communities. She simply seemed to be trying to survive. Originally, Medusa was depicted as an almost comically awful-looking beast, who, besides the snakes, would have bulging eyes and even a beard. Slowly over the years, she has been given back some of her beauty. Modern depictions of her retain the head full of writhing snakes, but her face is usually attractive and feminine. If Medusa's tale ended here, it would certainly be terrible enough. Due to circumstances beyond her control, everything was stripped from her. Unfortunately, her story comes to a tragic end when it intersects the tale of Perseus. Perseus was a demigod, or half-god, as his mother was the mortal woman Danae, and his father was Zeus, king of all the gods. Polydectes was the king of the land where Perseus and his mother lived, and was in love with the beautiful Danae, a fact that Perseus was not happy about. In an effort to get Perseus out of his way, Polydectes sent him on an impossible quest, to bring back the head of the mortal Gorgon, Medusa. Now, as if she hadn't already done enough, Athena began coaching Perseus on how to defeat Medusa. He bullies the Grey Women for information and is able to obtain the ultimate gear upgrade: Zeus's harp sword, which was sharp enough to do the deed; Hades' helm of darkness, which would allow him to be hidden; Hermes' winged sandals, which would allow him to fly; Athena's polished shield, which would allow him to get around Medusa's one defense; and a magical bag to safely keep her severed head within. Perseus went to the cave where Medusa dwelled, snuck up on her, and using the shield as a mirror to avoid her deadly gaze, he decapitated her. From her neck sprang forth the offspring of her assault by Poseidon. The children were Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor of the golden sword, who was a giant. Perseus was able to then hide from the remaining Gorgons and escape with the prize that he had come for. At this point, Perseus is able to rescue his mom and marry Andromeda, who was the most beautiful woman alive at that time. He basically gets everything he wants as he does this sort of world tour of turning to stone anyone that stands in his way, be they monsters or kings. During this time, blood that dripped from the head had the power to transform the world around it, making coral in the Red Sea or spawning monsters wherever it fell. He then gives the head to Athena, who puts it on her shield, the Aegis. While there are multiple variations of Medusa's story, certain constants remain. Medusa was unjustly punished by Athena, vilified, and then slayed by Perseus. Poseidon seems to get no blame for his actions, often seen as unable to resist Medusa's beauty. And Athena, the so-called goddess of wisdom, is truly the villain of the story. Medusa was her priestess, from whom she stripped her beauty and then transformed her into a powerful monster. Athena then led Perseus to the tools he would need to defeat her, and would eventually use Medusa's head for her own protection. These points serve as a reminder that these myths, as well as most of the tales that make up our collected fictional narrative of the past, were told by men. Medusa's is just one of many of these stories that has been recently reclaimed for the empowerment of women. And while it may have started as a chronicle of jealousy and evil, it has become a tale of strong and formidable female power, freedom, and transformation. From the earliest appearances, we see Medusa's image used as a sort of evil eye, a symbol used to protect from and ward off evil influences and bad luck. She could be seen on armor, weapons, relics, and entryways and doorways. In this way, she becomes an evil fighting evil, much like when her head was used by Perseus to defeat other monsters. But what does her image represent in our modern times? The answers vary greatly, but here I will cover many of the more recent interpretations. Beginning in the 1970s, Medusa became a symbol of feminism, representing female rage and power. A 1978 publication called Women, a Journal of Liberation, featured Medusa on its cover and stated, "Medusa can be a map to guide us through our terrors, through the depths of our anger into the sources of our power as women." In this context, Medusa can be seen to represent strength, and can serve as a reminder to oneself to not let anyone hold you down. Medusa was blamed and then ultimately punished for the actions of others, as her beauty was said to be the reason that Poseidon was unable to stop himself from attacking her. And because of this, everything was stripped from her by a jealous goddess. This story was an ancient representation of the unfair practice we still see today, where assault victims are blamed for what has happened to them, and are often seen as lesser because of it. A Medusa tattoo could be seen to represent not evil, but a strong figure who had to overcome enormous pain and trauma, thereby denying the victim-blaming narrative. Gianni Versace made the Medusa head the emblem of his Italian fashion house because he liked how she made people fall in love with her to the point of no return, which I guess is one way to put it. He hoped that people would feel the same way about his clothing. Versace's interpretation was beauty and seduction, an irresistible allure. Medusa can be seen as a femme fatale, a symbol of erotic desire, violence, and death. She was so beautiful, even the gods could not resist her. A figure who is both enchanting and lethal. A Medusa tattoo can be a way of saying, "Do not approach me," or, "If you get too close, you will get hurt." Perhaps those who are shy or are uncomfortable around others use it in this way, much like ancient priestesses wore Medusa masks to ward off unwanted attention. Snakes periodically shed their skin, so Medusa can be seen to represent transformation, a natural cycle of birth, death, and regeneration. The fact that offspring arose from her wound and monsters were spawned from her blood tells us Medusa can represent fertility and rebirth. The duality of beauty and horror in this story reminds us that often the deadliest things can be the most beautiful, and there is usually a bad side beneath the surface. A Medusa tattoo can also represent looking or being different, or can be a sigil to keep evil at bay and grant its wearer a feeling of safety. Unfortunately, much like so many other good symbols that have been used for nefarious purposes, the shamrock, swastika, and many Norse runes to name a few, there is a dark side to Medusa symbology. During the 2016 presidential election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, the Trump campaign began to portray Mrs. Clinton as Medusa and Trump as Perseus. He also referred to her as a bitch and a nasty woman, and said that he must cut off her head to silence her. Trump and others have used Medusa in this way to represent male privilege and misogyny, a symbol which tries to criticize and silence powerful women. Elizabeth Johnston wrote in an article in The Atlantic, "In Western culture, strong women have been historically imagined as threats, requiring male conquest and control." Medusa herself has long been the go-to figure for those seeking to demonize female authority. In 1791, during the French Revolution, Marie Antoinette was portrayed as Medusa in order to dehumanize her, and as we saw with Hillary Clinton, this tactic is still used today, and negative Medusa portrayals have been applied to Madonna, Condoleezza Rice, and Martha Stewart, as well as to many other women. To those using Medusa in this way, she is seen as evil, but I think that is much too simple. To me, she is misunderstood. A victim of lust and jealousy, hers is a story of both beauty and tragedy, and while something is taken away from her, a deadly strength is left in its place. To me, Medusa represents a taking back of stolen power. Of course, these are all just theories, and each tattoo's story is as different as the individuals who wear them. Just remember that we are all unique and valid and deserving of kindness. And on that note, thanks so much for watching. What does Medusa represent to you? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video or learned something new, please consider subscribing to my channel, which is all about tattoos and their meanings. Until next time, goodbye and good luck.